of all, what I'd like to know is just tell everybody what your film is and what you did on your film.
Okay, so this film was called Imagine This, a story told with sound effects. And I've submitted it as an experimental film to several film festivals. Yours is now the 13th that's picked it, and it's pending in 28 more, including 3 in the Atlanta area, down near where you are. And I sort of did everything in this film. Now, once somebody sees the film, they'll realize that maybe this was a lot easier than it sounds, since unlike most films, there are no actors, there's no script per se, there's no dialogue, and there's no film footage at all. So in a sense, it was a lot easier to do than most films. And in fact, that's what was the inspiration for this. I was at the gym one day riding the exercise bike, looking out over San Francisco Bay and saying, golly, there should be an easier way to make films than what I've been experiencing. Too much time, too much effort. I wonder if I could make a film that used only sound effects. And it turns out I was right. You can, and I did.
That's one of the most impressive things, because I happened to read what your film was about before I saw it. I was like, that's an interesting concept. That's something I haven't seen before. Okay, I gotta play this one. And amazingly, you accomplished just that. I was like, oh my God, nothing but sound effects, and there's an actual story.
Yes, there's an actual story, but, and this is where the title of the film comes in, Imagine This. You, the viewer, have to imagine what the story is, even though sort of the broad outlines are pretty obvious as you begin watching the film. It starts with somebody trying to reach somebody on the phone, and obviously they're not successful. So they get in a car and they drive off, obviously to find this person, and they get to their house. And then what happens then? And that's the really key part, is to figure out, okay, I understand something has happened here, but who did it happen to, and who didn't it happen to, and why did this happen? And that's sort of the key thing. And so you can make up your own story, and several people have, and said, well, this is what I think the story is, you know. And that's the whole idea behind the film.
It's almost like reading a novel, but hearing it. And you have to visualize everything yourself. That's the one thing I liked about it. It was like, oh, so you're telling a film, which typically you should show and not tell.
Right.
But you're hearing and not showing. Yeah. And it makes audiences use a different sense that than they're normally used to using. Like you could, you know, they're used to watching all the explosions and everything, and now they can hear it, and they have to visualize the story themselves. That's the brilliant thing about what you did, and you did it really well.
Well, thank you. So when I first was thinking about how to do this, I thought, well, I'll just have the sounds, and there'll be nothing but a black screen. And I thought, well, that probably doesn't work. You have to have something. So essentially what you do is you hear a sound, and you see what that sound is as sort of a closed caption or subtitle to sort of guide you along and make you realize, oh yeah, that's what I heard. But that's all you did. Unlike most films where if you turned on subtitles, you would hear, like if you watch all these British shows, there's always a million birds chirping, right? Birds chirping, birds chirping. They chirp all over England, apparently. And so you hear what the sounds are because it's put in for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. But this film has nothing but those closed captions and the sound. And you have to figure out, well, what's happening. And there's an obvious storyline. And probably most people would benefit from watching the film 2 or 3 times because they'd say, wait a minute, I missed something there. Now let me go back and watch it again.
So crafting this film, what was the most difficult aspect of crafting it?
Well, now this film was made 6 years ago, but my recollection is I had to start out by finding sources of sound effects. and then sorting through them and trying to figure out, well, which ones would lend themselves to some kind of a story. And I had to amass enough of them that I could figure out, okay, this is what I think the story is, and then arrange them in the order that actually told the story, but left some mystery at the end. That was the hardest part, I think, is figuring out what sounds would fit in the film to tell a story instead of just random sounds, which wouldn't.
So you said that you finished this film 6 years ago. So
Yes.
Has it been going to film festivals that long? Or is
So it's a little more recent. I did a documentary film, a feature-length documentary film about travel to Cuba by Americans from the early part of the 20th century, the 1930s, up to the Castro Revolution. And there's a hiatus about 30 years. And then we start going back after the Soviet Union collapses and Cuba goes, oops, what happened to all that money? You know, where are we going to get it from? How about tourists? Yes, American tourists. They have a lot of money. And we started going again. So I was working on that film about the same time as I did Imagine This. And when I was getting it finished, some of the colleagues at the media center I belong to, which is a nonprofit that ran a local community TV station, a non-commercial station, said, are you going to submit this film, this Cuba film, to film festivals? And I thought, well, golly, I don't know, maybe. And so I started doing that. And as that film got accepted in festivals, I started thinking, well, what about some of my other films? And then I started submitting this one probably, I'm guessing, maybe three years ago. And by 2019, it was starting to get picked by festivals. So that's how that developed. I never did the film with the idea of being a film festival. In fact, I just figured, oh, film festivals, you got to be a big time, movie producer and have lots of contacts and know people and stuff to get in. Because we did have a pretty major film festival right in our backyard that's been going on now over 40 years. And there's no way any of my films would have gotten that film festival.
I almost think the same way about my films at film festivals here in Georgia as well. They've been more successful outside of Georgia than they actually have been in Georgia.
Yeah. And what I've sought with some of my films, since I have lived in the Western United States most of my life, is how about if I can get them in a festival within an hour or two drive or an hour or two of flying time, and then I could attend the festivals would be practical. So what kind of luck have I had there? Not a whole lot. Some here in Oregon, in fact, just about a month ago, I went to a film festival held at a very interesting place. It's on the Columbia River. It's a small town, and the old Sunshine Biscuit flour mill is there, and it's been repurposed as a winery. And outside, on the back of all of the grain silos, they have a really large movie screen, and they have what they call a drive-up movie theater instead of a drive-in. And instead of having those little speaker things you used to hang on the window of your car, you tune your car radio to a FM radio frequency that pipes the sound into your car. And so I saw myself actually in a film I've acted in on the silver screen of this outdoor movie theater. And so that was good. I've gone to a few in Oregon, but I've not made it to one in London that's had two of my films. And I've not been to the ones in Georgia either. One of the nice things about living in Eugene is it's a slower pace than in the San Francisco Bay Area. One of the things that's not too good is getting from here to other places. Generally involves flying out at dark 30 and changing planes one or two times and arriving late in the night, and then not actually getting to your final destination and spending a lot of money doing it. Yeah. And so the cost of travel to film festivals sometimes is hard to justify.
It is, and one of the reasons I haven't been able to get out there myself is because I've been doing a film festival. So a lot of my time is here. I let my cast and crew go out to them when I can, but I mean, I've had films in Canada and Transylvania, of all places. And we're not going to Transylvania. That ain't happening. So tell me a little bit about some of the other types of projects that you've done and what you've done on them. I mean, obviously you did everything on this film, but what is your background?
So the one film that I've been involved with that involved other people working on the film is this one that I went to at this drive-up movie theater. It's called The White Bag, and it's a spoof on film noir spy movies. And this came out of a class project at this media center I belong to in the San Francisco Bay Area, where the class was how to film and edit with smartphones and tablets. And I thought the class would focus on techniques and equipment and whatever. And it did to some extent, but the instructor had in mind that the class would come up with an idea for a film, and then they would collectively film it and collectively edit it into a short film that would then be shown on the non-commercial community TV station associated with the media center. And so the idea was, let's do a film noir kind of a film. And we had 4 actors, and I got picked to be the lead actor. I don't know why. So the storyline is, I am trying to find the white bag, because the white bag contains a secret, which if it falls into the hands of the bad guys, think of Goldfinger in the Bond movies, the world is curtains, it's over with. We're dead. We're gone. They're going to blow us up or hold us up for ransom and take all of our money and whatever, and then kill us. So I'm supposed to find the white bag. And so I'm sitting writing some notes, and my cell phone rings, and or a text message comes in. Have you found the white bag? And I jump up and I run out the door and I go looking for the white bag. And so I see this woman walking down the street with the white bag, and I say, that's it. No, it's takeout from Su Lin's Chinese restaurant, and then I see somebody else walking. Yes, it's this. No. And there's a guy, and yes, no. And then I come back to the office, and there's the white bag, and I go, yes, no, it's an empty Dunkin' Donut bag. Oh, no. And so it's a silly little film. And one person did all the filming with an iPhone 6. And we sat down to collectively edit it, and we just didn't finish it. The idea was that we would just have music and sound effects. There was no dialogue. And so everybody had the film clips, and I'm the only one who actually made a film out of that. And so I wrote a voiceover script, a la, say, Humphrey Bogart in the Maltese Falcon, where he's walking around and talking about Miles and whatever, And so I wrote that and recorded that and picked the music and did the editing and produced the final film. And the fun thing about it is the first film festival was in the San Francisco Bay Area, and most of the cast and crew got to come and see their film at a film festival. How many times would that happen? So that was an interesting project. And then I've done 2 documentary films now that are basically feature length. This one about Cuba, and that's been in 71 festivals so far.
Nice.
And then recently I released one called Remembering Kinder Transport. Now, Kinder Transport was a British project to remove Jewish children from Europe before the start of World War II and bring them to England so they wouldn't be subject to deportation and, of course, ultimately sent to concentration camps by the Nazis. And so it focuses on one of those people who was taken from Berlin with her sister to England. The rest of her family ultimately made it out of England before the war started. And she was a mathematical whiz. And after finishing high school, she taught math at the high school. Then she studied some more. Then she came to the United States and taught at Harvard and some other schools, and ultimately became a professor at the University of Oregon here in Eugene. And she was a resident of the retirement community where I live. And so she was interviewed about her experiences in life, but particularly Kinder Transport. And that was an idea that we had to just preserve her story, sort of an oral history project. But I took the interview footage and mixed it with a bunch of B-roll and some of which were photos she had brought with her when she left Germany. And put that together in a documentary style film. And that's just been picked by a film festival. Just recently, I started putting it out on the circuit. I've done some other films that are basically sort of mood pieces, sense of place, that sometimes are just still photos with Ken Burns effect and voiceover. Some of them are just video plus classical music, and some of those films have been in festivals. I've done, I think, 30 films, over 30 films for non-commercial community TV, and 9 have been in festivals so far.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, have most of those been documentaries, or have they been all types of genres?
Well, there's the White Bag, of course, is a spoof. It's a comedy. Imagine this as an experimental film. The other ones, it's the ones that are sort of mood pieces, kind of fit sort of documentary, but they're not a full documentary style with interviews and B-roll and stuff. They're just visual stories. And there's several of those. I was doing travel writing after I retired as a lawyer. And when my friend suggested I join the media center, my first thought was I'll do some kind of travel-related TV show on this station. And I never did that, and I ended up doing all these other projects instead. And I didn't go to film school. I went to law school.
Yeah, I get that now. I was like,
which would have been a good training if I wanted to become either a movie producer or an agent. But it taught me nothing about how to make films. That I learned through classes at this media center, and some self-study and just doing it. Right? You just do it.
Yeah, that's a good thing to actually mention. Someone like you who didn't go to film school, who was a lawyer first, retired, and then you went to a media center and you learned how to make films.
Yeah,
a lot of the filmmakers, the young filmmakers that I've met and came to our events have all, they're all student filmmakers starting out. So
yeah,
it's good to hear, and it's refreshing to hear when someone who doesn't go to film school is out there making films. And
yeah, I mean, you have to learn techniques. Mm-hmm. So we had a class in TV studio production. We had a class in filming in the field. We had a Final Cut Pro editing class. And then one of the most useful classes was taught by a retired TV and film editor. And that was a class sort of about, this is how film editors approach their work. And we studied some specific films, and we had homework assignments. One of the most useful ones was watch any film with the sound off and get a sense of the pacing of the film, and also the transition between scenes, how the cuts were done. Because as the instructor said, what makes your film work is to pay attention to the cuts. They need to be moving the story forward, even if you have a film that jumps back in time and then jumps forward again. That story has to progress. And what I got from all of this is, and my own sense of watching films is, if you watch a movie and suddenly the credits are rolling and you say, I can't believe it's over. There isn't more. I wanted more. I wanted more. I was so engrossed in this. I wanted more. And the other thing is, I never had to stop and think about, what's this character? Who's this? Or what's going on now? I'm totally lost. And then by the time you've thought about that a while, the film has kept running and you say, now where are we? If you end up with a film like that, it's not a good film. If you end up one that's sort of seamless and then it's over and you say, golly, I can't believe it's over. Wow, that was really good. That's the mark to me of excellent filmmaking.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Yeah, that's a really good point to make. That's why it's refreshing to talk to all types of filmmakers. I'm glad to be able to talk to you, because you have one of the most bold films that we're screening, it being told by sound effects. It's also short, but it's straight to the point. And it leaves the audience thinking about what they've just heard. Now I want to actually go back and rewatch it again.
Yeah, and maybe you had a certain idea what the story was the first time. And now you watch it again and maybe you'll think, no, wait a minute, that isn't what happened. Yeah. I mean, there is this thing at the end where, and I don't want to give away what happens, but something happens and you have to figure out who did it happen to and why. And you know how the end is pretty clear, but sort of that middle part is hard to figure out, and you may ponder about that. What was that? And then what prompted the person to make the phone call to try to see this person, and who was that person, and why was it important to just not wait until the next day or try to call them again later or leave a voicemail message or something? There's obviously some urgency involved with going to find that person when they don't answer the phone. At least I think that's what I was trying to achieve. You realize it's not like, I just play telephone tag with a person. No. It's like they're not answering the phone. They're not answering the phone. First it's a busy signal, which means they're there, and then there's no answer, which means something happened, and I better go find out, or else something.
So, did you enjoy working in the experimental film background, or was it just an experiment itself for you?
Yeah, well, it was basically an experiment for me. It's like, oh, here's an idea. I wonder if this will really work. And when people saw it and they gave me some personal feedback, I realized, yeah, it kind of does work. And so it wasn't a completely flaky idea. And I'm a little amazed that it's actually been picked up by several film festivals, because it seemed to me this is a very strange film. And I've had a chance to go to a festival up in Portland, Oregon, that had an experimental film category, and none of those films were anything like my film. They were all kind of a lot of visual stuff and kind of hazy things and fading in and out, and kind of, I would have called them not experimental, but just weird films. But this is probably nothing like that. And I don't know how many experimental films you've picked for your festival. My assumption is this film is nothing like those others at all.
It's not like any other films that we're playing this year. And to be honest, we've only been playing experimental films for 2 seasons now. So I enjoy experimental films. So I kind of added this to our repertoire because we haven't always done them. Because I know there are a lot of people who don't really get experimental films. So, like you said, there's a lot of those experimental films. Woo! We're doing really crazy stuff. We don't know what we're doing, but we're doing it just to have it cool. But yours is one that takes the concept of sound effects only to tell a story without the visuals. And so for me, that is the epitome of what an experimental film is. You're experimenting with something that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to screen it. Unless of course you had just thrown random sound effects in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck's going on. I don't know if I want to screen this one.
Yeah.
I mean, this year we're probably screening the most experimental films that we have ever done. And the crazy thing that's actually really nice is that every one of them is completely different. Every one of them had either the story that they're trying to tell is very weird, out there, experimental, or like you said, there's the visuals are crazy, or something like yours, which is experimenting with the aesthetics of filmmaking. Sound effects is one of those things that not a lot of people explore, other than it being an element of the film as a whole. I don't see many people or filmmakers doing what you just did with this film. I'd love to see other people try to experiment with stuff like this. People love to go back and experiment with black and white versus color. They like to experiment with, no dialogue a lot. I see that every year. I see tons of it. But sound effects, I've never seen it before. It was the first time.
And to me, one of the beauties of film festivals is you have an opportunity, if you can go in person, or of course during the pandemic, a lot of them have been online only. You get a chance to see films that you will never have a chance to see anywhere else at all. And one of the things I've done here at the retirement community where I live, and I run the in-house television broadcasting system, is I've gone to Vimeo where most of us filmmakers put our films that we're going to submit to festivals. And I found series of films in different genres, and I put them together on a flash drive, and I stick them in a little device that's sort of like a mini DVD player, and set those films running continuously. And they play. We've been playing those when we've not been broadcasting something else, whether it's a live event or a pre-recorded thing. And I announced last night at our monthly meeting that I was going to discontinue doing that for, at least for a while. And one of the residents said, "Oh, I am so distraught to hear that, because those films are so interesting and so unusual. I watch them all the time." And of course, these are films that have been in festivals, and some have won awards, and some have probably won Academy Awards. It's the kind of stuff you can only see at a film festival. You will not find it on any television station. You will not find it in any multiplex movie theater unless they do, like, the Oscar-nominated shorts or something around the time of the Academy Awards. So this is, to me, the thing that should encourage people to go to film festivals. It's a chance to see films you probably can't see elsewhere, whatever genre they're in. You probably can't see them anywhere except a film festival, unless they happen to be something that was at Cannes, let's say, or Sundance and Toronto, and they get major distribution, which is not going to happen with most of the films that get into film festivals, even though they're quite well done.
Yeah. 1 billion films are made a year. Maybe 10% of them are ever seen by a mainstream audience. The rest are film festivals.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, any last thoughts about your film or something you'd like to say about your filmmaking for everybody out there?
Well, I think the interesting thing is all of my films, not including this one, and the very first film I made, have all been shot using an iPhone, maybe with some external microphones, or external lenses. But you don't need to buy a red camera or something really expensive and have a lot of gear. And you don't have to have a big crew, and you don't have to have a lot of actors, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to make films that can be shown at least on community TV stations. And mine have been on stations all across the country many times. Probably the stations serve millions of households. We never know how many are watching ours. But you can do this stuff. And if you have a little bit of imagination and you get a little bit of training, so you learn techniques and you observe some other films and learn from them, everybody who's going to watch this and everybody who comes to your festival could probably make a film that got in a film festival if they put their mind to it.
Well, those are some great words for our young filmmakers or all filmmakers who are out there making their movies, because that's essentially the point of us, or me doing, or me and my crew doing this film festival. We want to explore all the stuff that's out there. So I want to thank you for joining us for this interview.
And let me ask you one question before we go.
Yes.
How did you create this film festival, and why? What led you to do this? Were you released from a mental hospital or something, and you had this crazy idea to do a film festival?
I've had a crazy idea about doing a film festival for probably 20 years. I helped out with a horror film festival in like 2004, 2005, and then went to help out for the Rome International Film Festival here in Georgia 1 year. Helped my friend do an indie film festival, the Blank Stage Film Festival, for 1 year. And then 10 years ago, I said, screw it. I started a regular international film festival, which took in films from everywhere. So I did that one for 3 years because someone else was paying for everything. After my contract with that one was up, I still had the bug. But after 3 years of doing an international film festival, we didn't focus on any one genre, and I realized that it was hard to get general audiences to come in and acknowledge a film festival that just kind of showed everything. So we started off, me and my new partner started off, and we're going to do genre film. We're going to do horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and what was the other one we started with? Animation. The four that never get spoken for in big, large film festivals. And then we started realizing that what we were missing were experimental, which is why we added that, and fan films. They just get overlooked. So we put all those together, and now we have Something Wicked Film Festival. Although that is named after one of my favorite writers of all time, which is Ray Bradbury and his Something Wicked This Way Comes. So I had to throw that in there myself. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of film festivals that help both the student and young indie filmmakers as well as bigger filmmakers, as well as bigger filmmakers who have done lots of films. So we have this huge gap, or we have this huge array of different types of films. We will screen films from indie filmmakers who have almost no experience, and then we're going to screen ones that have a lot of experience. Like some of the films on our roster this year are Hollywood caliber films. They have Hollywood stars in them. I mean, they are horror films or sci-fi films, but they have those special effects and they have those that pedigree. But then next to those are the people who are making the monsters in their garage, or the people who are using the iPhone and shooting something using the iPhone, but they make it so that the story or the aesthetics they're using will appeal to a mass audience. And those are the films we're going to screen. We're not going to screen something that we've seen a billion times. Like, I try and steer away from zombie, vampire films, unless there's something different about them, or they're just done so well I can't overlook the fact that they're zombies and vampires. I want to see new stuff.
Yeah.
Your film was something new, something I hadn't seen before. I had to say, there were no visuals, but it's new. It's something I haven't seen before, even for an experimental film. So that I can appreciate, and I hope other people can appreciate it as well. And of course, thank you for making this film, and of course, allowing us to screen it.
Well, and thank you for picking it. You mentioned sci-fi. We've been showing 4 classic sci-fi movies here, including my all-time favorite that I saw as a 10-year-old, which is Forbidden Planet, which had $1 million budget, which in 1956 or whenever it was made was an enormous amount of money. It has visual effects that are astounding for its time, and it has really a great story and some really good acting in it. And I was surprised to read recently about the film and how important it is sort of in the lexicon, if you will, of science fiction films. And the other one we were showing this from that era is The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is also a very classic science fiction film. So I think that genre kind of tends to be overlooked too, unless you're talking about Star Wars or something like that.
Which I won't look down upon, because we are screening a lot of Star Wars fan films. I know there are a lot of people out there who love to do Star Wars fan films, and they actually do them really well without having a Hollywood budget. So
yeah.
Well, thank you, Dick, for joining us, and I wish you nothing but luck with the rest of your films. And please, when you come up with some more films, send them our way. Like I said, we wish your film, Imagine. Now I can't even think of the name now. Imagine. Your film has a very successful festival run.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate having you select the film, and I wish you great luck in having a very successful festival this year and in years to come. Thank you, Kevin.